Jamail Mathews joins the show to discuss Texas Southern's development during spring practices, the upcoming fall season, and then his own individual journey in the game of sports media. Oh, yeah, it's Locked On HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the HBCU podcast, your number one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics. Monday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darian Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor. Thank you for going on this journey with me, making Locked On HBCU of the day every day. In today's episode, I have a very special guest. It's a guy that I go way back with. We were covering Texas Southern together in college, and he is still in Houston to cover the Texas Southern spring game and spring practices. A real expert in the arts. I can't wait for you to hear his perspective on how that season went, and then also his own individual journey, because it's just really cool information to me, and it should be to you as well. Without further ado, here goes Jamail Mathews. All right, now I wanted to ask you, when we're talking about Texas Southern, we have to talk about the quarterback play. And I wanted to ask you about Andrew Body. In this spring practice, in the spring game, did you see him taking that next step of evolution throughout his collegiate career?
My answer is yes. The reason I say that, if anybody went to any spring practice or went to the spring game, one thing about Andrew Body, I know a lot of people play Madden. It's a specific trait. It's called magician. If you ever played Madden, now I'm gonna break it down to the people that didn't play Madden.
Because I didn't play it. I'm not a Madden guy, so break it down to me.
I'm gonna break it down to you. A player that can make anything happen. You put the ball in Andrew Body hand, you good. Anything can happen with Andrew Body. He's sitting there during the spring game. The proper read wasn't there. Andrew Body ran. If it wasn't touched, that could have been 6. That's how good he is. He can make the throw. He can run. And I feel like Texas Southern never really had a quarterback like that besides Devin Williams. And hey, we in for a treat this fall.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm glad you mentioned that, because I wasn't going to go this direction. But with you mentioning Devin Williams, I wanted to talk about the offensive line in front of the quarterback as well, because I felt like when Williams and Johnson and really any quarterback that was there when we were in school, I feel like they didn't have a line to protect them. But this line is one of the better lines in the SWAC. You know, just talk about that partnership between Body and his big lineman in front of him protecting him.
See, I think one thing that's different from any other offensive lineman they had in the past when we was going to Texas Southern, and really with the whole team, I think it's a family atmosphere. You see offensive lineman going at a defensive lineman. Hey, I bet you $20 I'll pancake you. We didn't see that when we was going there. You got a sense of camaraderie there now. Family atmosphere, like with Johnson. You got Drake Sanders. You got the right mix. You got older players with the younger players, and they learning the way. It's just so many good things happening with that we didn't get to see when we was there.
Yeah, so going into the spring practice, 15 practices, of course, going into the spring season, what were you looking for Texas Southern?
The most thing I was looking for Texas Southern is like what you said about Andrew Body, just making that jump. Because every game last season that Texas Southern lost, you was at the door. Either you had to finish the game off, you lost by a field goal, or it was an untimely turnover. You was at the door. It could have beat Jackson State, which would have been big. That was the biggest game they had. You could have beat them. Every game was like that. You just couldn't finish the game. And I feel like more so last season is different from this season, because this season, everybody just, gelling with each other. And the biggest thing that I've seen that takes of is the connection between Andrew Body and Jyrin Johnson.
Well, Tell me a little bit more about it, because I wasn't able to get out to the spring game. I wasn't able to get out to the spring practices. So because Johnson, that's the tight end, right? The one I think he made second team all SWAC last year, correct?
Yeah, but you know they listen to him as a tight end. He a big boy, but he a wide receiver though.
Okay, so Cleveland Davis is gone. Is Johnson, you think, there to step into that role as the top receiver, whether just receiving threat, right? He's lined up or listed as a tight end, but you say he's like a wide receiver. The best receiving threat on that team. Is Johnson ready to step into that role?
Yeah, I absolutely think so. John Johnson is up for the capability. Sky's the limit for him. We got Andrew Body back there. Jyrin Johnson is the guy. Just throw it up there to him. He gonna go get it, just like it was last year. You throw it up to him, gonna go get it. Got speed. Hey, I wouldn't want to be one-on-one with him. Hey, you throw it up there, you gonna be in some trouble. And hey, you look at his size, you would think that he's not that fast. But if you're not careful, hey, where he went? He just scored a touchdown already. So that's how I feel about it.
Defensively, I really felt like that was the side of the ball that held the team back. They were a really good offensive ball club, but defensively, not so much. Were you seeing some evolution, some development from some of those guys who were there last year?
See, you talked about last season. One of the main things that people forget about last season, you had a lot of young guys playing in some big roles last year. You've seen the development at the end of the season. The beginning of the season was a little shaky. Like one player I can point out to you, Isaiah Hamilton, cornerback.
Yeah.
He stepped in a lot of times when players got hurt. But when that end of the season, man, who is this dude? He locking down the team's best wide receiver. I got what a club on. And hey, with him, hey, people put a notice on him because the dude is talented. And I think like with the defense, it's with the whole team, it's just a family atmosphere. And like, them boys ready to get after. They ready to prove something. It all starts with Tyree Cooper, DeMontario Anderson. Like dudes like that, they the catalyst of their defense. And I feel like with them, they gonna make something happen.
Yeah, so I've heard some good things about Zay, and I've also heard some good things about Perry Wells. It sounds like, it sounds like Texas Southern might come into the 2022 season with a pair of really good cornerbacks, and that could really elevate that defense.
Yeah, I also agree because you got Perry, you got Isaiah Hamilton, and you got Ja'Cory Benjamin. If people forget about Ja'Cory Benjamin can be a good catalyst in there too. Like the thing I like about this team that's different from any other team is that we're deep. We're deep at every position, and that what competition is always the best thing heading into the fall. It's gonna bring us the best out of the guys, and I feel like, hey, if you look at the depth chart, you're good. You're good on every point. I feel like that's gonna bring out the best out of the team this fall.
So you just heard Jamail break down everything that Andrew Body brings to the game, and he's a player that I've been excited about for a while, and it's nice to hear he's taking those steps forward. Now, as we continue with the show, we're going to take a step back and look at last season, and I have a really interesting question. Is Coach McKinney on a hot seat? But first, let me tell you about BetOnline, because BetOnline.net is the best place to put down all of your sports bet. If you want to wager on anything, wager on BetOnline.net. The playing games are coming up for the NBA playoffs. We focus so much on everything that's so far in the future ahead of us, but let's look at the present. Let's look at the immediate future, and that's the playing games. Check out Locked On Pelicans if you want to get a little bit more educated on everything the Pelicans have been doing, because Jake Madison has been doing a phenomenal job breaking down this team that has had a really interesting and event-filled season. Now, there's also Locked On Bets and everything, but I think that the Pelicans, that's what I'm going for. So go check out Locked On Pels with my guy Jake Madison. But that's not the only thing that you can wager on BetOnline.net. No, you can bet on the NFL. You can bet on MLB. The season just got going. So there's so many things you can bet on in addition to all your sports. You can even do your favorite Vegas casino games. That's right. So make sure you go to betonline.net, because it's the fastest and easiest way to wager on all of your favorite sports. Bet online, where the game starts. All right, so we keep on rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day, every day. And now for the big announcement starting April 28th. That's a Thursday, the Thursday that the draft starts. you can catch the Locked On NFL Draft's live coverage of the 2022 NFL Draft. It's going to have 3 days of coverage. So, yes, rounds 1 through 7 will all be being broken down on this show. Now, if you want to catch up with who your team might take, then you can go to Odyssey and check out the Locked On NFL Mock Draft. There's so much, hosted by former scout Matt Williamson of the Peacock and Williamson Show, all season up into the all week, leading up to the first pick. You can catch the Locked NFL Draft live on the Locked On NFL Draft YouTube page, the Odyssey NFL Mock Draft on the Odyssey and Locked On NFL Draft podcast feeds. And then also, don't forget, on April 28th, the Locked On NFL Draft coverage will begin. Now, I want to hear what Jamail has to say because I want to take a look back at the season. Let's see what's going to happen coming up. And then let's also ask the question. Is Coach McKinney on the hot seat? I don't know. He's more in tune with I as far as what's going on in the building at this moment. Texas Southern was the second best offense in the SWAC. The first offense was led by Aquil Glass, the freaking SWAC player of the year, Black National player of the year. Really a phenomenal athlete, right? Phenomenal player. But Texas Southern was right there at number 2. How were they able to develop into such a strong unit in addition to body, but then also that running game?
I think the biggest thing what I've noticed when I was going to practice is like body, the quarterback is always the captain for the most part of the team. And I feel like body just has this aura about him, like he just makes everybody around him better. And with him just pushing guys to that limit, pushing them to the points where their greatness is at that they haven't seen, I feel like with him coming in, he just pushed them guys to another level. And then like I told you, deep at every position. Like the one thing that nobody's talking about, everybody got their eyes on body, of course. Body's electric. But the thing that nobody's talking about is Ladarius Owens and that backup cast he had at running back. Them guys was getting some touchdowns last year. Ladarius Owens get you there. Ja'Cory Howard, the Dominique Franklin, and Kevin Harris get you in the end zone. That's how it was. Hey, you can tell by my smile I'm excited. I just can't wait to that Prairie game.
Nah, that should be a really good game. Now, I want to ask you because we know how you kick it off every year. PV got to go down and try to take them out this year. I think that's important. And I want to ask you because last year was a step up, but it was only 3 wins. I know. But the year before, you won 0 games. You won 0-3, and though it's a step up, it's still not that high. Is there a sense of optimism around Coach McKinney, or is there a sense of maybe some pressure and maybe he might be on the hot seat to really take a major step up this season?
I think there's always pressure, especially with the surrounding of HBCUs being so hot right now. You got Hugh Jackson at Grambling State, FAMU doing good, Jackson State doing good, Prairie View just got a new head coach, Dooley went to Southern. It's always pressure to do good because HBCUs are looked at now. On national TV, everybody want to be up at HBCU. But I think for the most part, what Coach McKinney's been able to do without being able to tap like at the heavy recruits in the transfer portal, been doing a good job. But you just have to have patience. Patience is always key in this thing. When you recruiting from high school, think about it. I just want to throw this out. If it wasn't for Coach McKinney, there would have been no Andrew Body. Think about that. Andrew Body didn't have any offer from any other school. McKinney saw him and got Andrew Body. But with every other recruit that he picked up are slowly showing that they good. Like we talked about Isaiah Helms, Ladarius Owens, Ja'Cory Howard, all these dudes that he recruited are showing out now.
So you talk about patience. And listen, I've been patient for a long time. Patience begins to run thin. I'm just being honest, okay? I've been there, and McKinney was not there our whole time at Texas Southern. So just to be clear, it's not a McKinney exclusive thing. This is just TSU and probably alumni wanting to get better. They want to get better. They want to win games. How does TSU build up that fan base? I've heard a lot of people asking me that. I'm sure a lot of people ask you that. There's some people who probably think like me, like, man, I just want to win. But how does TSU build that fan base, build that buy-in into the program from alumni, people around Houston, recruits around Houston, just everybody?
the simple answer would be win. But the most
Mhm.
important one of them all to set off TSU is what we just got finished talking about, preview. If you ask anybody, any college football fan, especially HBCU fan, who you got? Texas Southern preview. Not, I say probably 75% to 85% of people would be like, man, Preview gonna beat TSU. It's been a slogan for the last couple of years. Preview's gonna beat TSU only when it comes to football, but in basketball, y'all gotta know. It's been a slogan the whole time.
You ain't
But
lying.
I feel like if they can start the season on fire, and my dad gave me this quote: University of Houston. People remember good University of Houston football, but it was a point of time nobody wanted to go to U of H. It all started with one win. They beat one good team, and everybody wanted to jump on the bandwagon. And I think for TSU, that one win to solidify a good season, you got to be Prairie. You can't start the season off again 0-1. You got to be 1-0 to start off that season.
And that's a phenomenal point because those interstate rivalries can really go a long way in turning the tide of recruiting, because those Houston guys are not going to want to go to TSU as long as they keep losing to PV, and PV is right there in the state. Who are a couple of players that you think we need to watch out for?
Like I said, I'm not gonna necessarily. Everybody know who Jyrin Johnson is, Andrew Body, Ladarius Owens, but I want to point out like Savion Sims. People little glimpse Isaiah Hamilton, but I think you should keep an eye on Isaiah Hamilton. You said Perry Wells. I think Perry Wells gonna make some noise too. On the defensive side, in my opinion, DeMonte Anderson, in my opinion, I think he's gonna be defensive player of the year. I've been telling him that every time I see him, he just start laughing. That's just my opinion. Somebody
No,
might
that's
be
bold. I'm just saying that's bold.
Hey,
I ain't gonna knock you.
Hey, he say he ready for that tall task, and I believe him.
Okay.
And it's just that whole offensive line. I want everybody to keep their eyes on, because throughout our whole time at TSU, it's that offensive line hurting our quarterbacks. I just want everybody to keep an eye on that offensive line, because I feel like it's different now. I feel like they built their way up, and they're going to be good this season.
Really great insight, because there is always pressure on the coach, but it does not seem that he is on a hot seat. I think it was really good answers about that. And then also, how do you build up a fan base for Texas Southern? Now, going forward, as we wrap up, we're going to be talking about his personal journey, because I think that this is something that is really interesting. He's a really good storyteller, and I want to know, how did he become that? All right, so wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, Jamail is still here, and he's talking about his personal journey now. We put TSU to bed, but I want to talk about him because he's had an interesting journey as far as just independent media, but then his independent media company was featured on Bleacher Report in a real fantastic moment. I want to talk about your personal journey in media, because I think it's something that's really interesting, but I want to start it off with little family ties. And I want to talk about your brother who did play in the league. I don't know the gap between you guys, so I don't know the exact timeline with him playing for the Packers and, your age or whatnot, but just what impact did your brother have on your journey in media?
Oh, man. Hey, to be honest, if it wasn't for my brother, hey, I wouldn't really be in sports, because anybody that knows me, I was a super shy guy, but I always knew sports because of my brother's stats, who this player was, who that player was, and stuff like that. But the important thing is, you talked about the age gap. It's a 5-year difference between me and my brother, so we were pretty close. So anything my brother knows about sports, he just relayed it back to me. And the most important thing of it is that I like, he's at TSU right now, coaching the linebackers. They will make it. They put the cherry on top, because not only do I get to see TSU close in my eyes, I get to see it from a person that played in the field that they got a better perspective than me. And he break it down more to me than I would have ever thought.
Okay, so not only have you been a benefactor of your brother's experience, you've also been somebody who has really embarked on a unique path, and that's a storytelling path. It's something that I love, and I think that you're really adept at it as well. And you told stories on typically Instagram and social media, whether through just captions telling a story, or also through video packages? How did you get into making these stories or finding a passion for telling the story of others?
I say my grandma, because one of the main things, my grandma is a fantastic writer, but a lot of people don't really know this. But it all started when I was in elementary. I hated writing, hated English, I hated that. But my grandma wrote a particular story about me, and for me, I mean, and they read it all over the announcements and stuff like that. So I was like, man, I probably have something to do with that. But as a young kid, I really didn't pay no mind. It's like I like sports, basketball, and stuff like this, so I wouldn't pay no mind. And then fast forward, I got to TSU, met Professor Walker, excellent professor. She know I love sports, but she was like, "How can you tie it in with journalism?" So I was like, "Man, I hate talking because I'm shy." You know, when we first met, I really didn't say too much, unless it was dealing with someone with sports. So I was like, man, how can I tie this in to what I want to do? So I was like, let me start my own website. I won't do no interviews and nothing like that. I just start writing. So start writing. My first website was trash, but I just started writing stories about certain people, and people started encouraging me to start writing more because they seen potential in it. So I just started like tapping into my resources around me, and they started like helping me with my website, helping me with my grammar and stuff like that. I just started putting out more stories, like people that I know and people that I know that have a story, but it haven't been told.
So whether it's somebody that you know personally or somebody that was just somebody you were able to watch from a distance, who was your favorite story to tell?
Favorite story to tell. See, it will be my brother, but I'm a
Yeah,
knock that
change
out.
that. But that was a great story. That was a great story.
I think
You know,
probably
you can do it because your brother seems to be a really, big impact on your life. So if that's the one you want to highlight, go ahead. I'm not gonna tell you not to do it.
yeah. I is it fun if I highlight two?
Yeah, it's cool.
Because
Go ahead and do two.
it's a 1A and a 1B.
Okay,
1A is always gonna be my brother because
of course.
my brother super smart when it comes to the game of football. Like how he breaks down things, how he sees the game. And I feel like he's in his perfect position as coaching the linebackers. And I feel like his journey, because a lot of people didn't realize he played basketball. That was his first love. He didn't care about no football. You know, he didn't start off at no linebacker. He was a tight end at North Shore, and a coach by the name of Thomas Johnson gave him the opportunity to play linebacker. It just skyrocketed after that. But I feel like in my brother's journey, everything happens for a reason. Because my brother was always a top tier football player at the University of Houston, 100 tackles each season. But an injury in his senior season derailed that draft. He would have got drafted, but he tore his ACL. And he went to the Packers, went to the Redskins, went to the Giants. But time at the time he got let go. But it came full circle for him to coach. And if you ask me, this is the happiest I ever seen my brother, because he's passing his knowledge down to other players. And yeah, I just love that he found his passion. And my 1B will have to be my cousin. My cousin passed away playing football. He broke his neck. And the reason I say it's like one of my best stories, I still hate this to the day, that I always want to I always want to reach out to him. Never did before that time came. And I was like, it was joy coming out of me that I was able to honor him that way by writing that story about him, about his life, how he wanted to make it to the NFL, how he impacted others around him with his smile, his laughter, and his jokes, how he impacted his family and things like that. That yeah, I go back and read this story time to time, including with my brother.
Yeah, I think it was deserving to be a 1A and a 1B in that situation. Now, you also unfiltered media, right?
Oh
And
yeah.
y'all have made a lot of headway really quickly. I want you to tell me about a specific moment though when you seen yourselves get credited. And I think it was a Bleacher Report, if I'm not mistaken. When you saw
Yeah.
yourself get credited on Bleacher Report, just what was that moment like?
I never forget this. Shout out to Wilson Chaney and Byron watched, but I never forget. You know, in journalism, it's kind of hard to get into. And during that period of time, I started to lose hope because it's kind of hard to get into. You got to constantly work at it. But Javante Davis fight, I forgot who he was going against, and I just got out of work, and he knocked out somebody, and Wilson tweeted it, and then probably like 4 or 5 hours later, it's going crazy, likes, retweets, and I'm like, dang, like we can make this happen, and then probably the next day he called me. He like, hey man, guess what? And he sent me a link. We in Bleacher Report. I'm like, hey, it coming full circle. I just feel like, we just have like a unique bond with each other. Like we brothers at the end of the day. We make jokes towards each other. We come together to make good content. Like we're not going against each other. Like everybody trying to see everybody do good. Like everybody involved in Unfiltered Media.
Yeah, so I think that's a beautiful story, whether that's you telling your individual stories, but then also the story of finding that, you got a big time credit in Bleacher Report. So tell the people where they can find you before we get out of here, please.
Oh yeah, you can find me at Jamail Mathews on Twitter and Instagram, and you can find me my sports page at unmatched_sports, and all my stuff will be there.
Spell out your name for them so they know how to spell it. They get it right.
Oh yeah, it's Jamail Mathews with 1 T, Mathews.
And it will be in the description. So make sure you guys check that out because he's producing a lot of great content, and you will catch him back on here to talk about Texas Southern in the future. My connect down there in Houston, I appreciate you, my guy.
Oh yeah, anytime, dog.
It was an absolute blast catching up with my guy Jamail. It felt like no time had passed. Like we were still on a Tiger walk, just talking about what's going to happen this Saturday in the football game. It was so much fun. So thank you again for him coming out. But if you want to catch content from me giving my opinion, me bringing in insiders to give their opinion as well, then make sure you continue to make Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day every single day. And on tomorrow's episode, we're going to get right back in talking about these spring games because there was a lot this weekend that we need to make sure that we're talking about. Now, for your second listen of the day, make sure you're checking out Locked On NFL Draft. We're right there. We're about 3 weeks away from the NFL Draft starting. So you need to make sure that you have all of the information right there in front of you. And that's where you need to go for that. Eric Crocker and then also Ryan Tracy breaking you down for 1 through 7 rounds, 1 through 7, everything that you could possibly need. Now, in the meantime, if you want to catch up with me, you can find me on that blue app, that bird, yes, Twitter, at South Exclusives. Until the next time that we hear each other, family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.